A car accelerates down a dead-end road at 5:30 in the morning. No skid marks, no swerving, no attempt to stop. It hits the corner of a brick building at nearly 100 miles per hour. 2 people are dead, 1 person survives. And that survivor, the driver, will spend the next year and a half claiming she remembers nothing. This is Mackenzie Shurilla, a 17-year-old aspiring TikTok influencer from suburban Ohio. A girl who called her boyfriend her soulmate at his sentencing. A girl convicted of his murder. The new Netflix documentary, The Crash, has put this case back in front of millions of people. Today we're walking through the timeline, the theories, including her own defense, and then telling you what we think most likely happened. Fair warning, it's not a comfortable conclusion. Who were these people? Mackenzie Shurilla was 17 years old in the summer of 2022, living in Strongsville, Ohio, a suburb southwest of Cleveland. She wanted to be a model and influencer, posted regularly on TikTok and Instagram, and had a large social circle. But underneath that curated image, something darker was going on. Dominic Russo was 20. He and Mackenzie had been in an on-and-off relationship for roughly 4 years. At some point, Mackenzie had moved into his family's home. His mother, Christine Russo, owned 2 houses side by side in Strongsville, and Mackenzie lived with Dominic in one of them. Davian Flanagan was 19, Dominic's friend, not part of the relationship drama. He was simply along for the ride that night. A relationship falling apart. By the summer of 2022, Christine Russo described the relationship as strained, full of fights, breakups, and threats. Dominic's brother, Angelo Russo, testified that Dominic had broken up with Mackenzie many times over the years, and that by June and July 2022, he was seriously considering ending it for good. That detail is crucial. Dominic was pulling away, and Mackenzie could feel it. 2 weeks before the crash, on July 17th, Dominic called his mother in distress from a car. A family friend, Christopher Martin, went to pick him up and found the car pulled over on the shoulder of I-71. Through his phone, he heard Mackenzie say, "I'm going to wreck this car right now." There was a physical struggle before Dominic managed to get out. This was not a one-off moment. Videos recovered from a phone at Dominic's house showed Mackenzie threatening to break into his home, key his car, and physically striking him as he tried to leave. His mother received multiple distress calls from him in the weeks before his death. Prosecutors also played a TikTok video in court where Mackenzie says, "I'm the one you die for." July 30th to 31st, 2022. On the evening of July 30th, the 3 attended a graduation party, then moved to a friend's house and stayed through the night. At approximately 5:30 a.m. on July 31st, they got into Mackenzie's 2018 Toyota Camry. Surveillance footage showed the car making a normal turn. Mackenzie even used her turn signal onto Progress Drive. It's a rough industrial back road with a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit that ends in a dead-end T intersection at a brick manufacturing facility. It doesn't connect to anywhere useful. You don't end up there by accident. And crucially, GPS data from Mackenzie's phone placed her at that exact location 3 days earlier, on July 28th. Once on Progress Drive, the car accelerated hard. The vehicle's event data recorder, the black box, confirmed what the footage showed. 100% accelerator the entire time. The brakes were never applied. Not once. The car hit the corner of the Plitco building at approximately 97 miles per hour. Dominic Russo and Davian Flanagan were pronounced dead at the scene. Mackenzie was airlifted to hospital with 3 broken ribs, a broken femur, and a lacerated liver. One of the first things she said at the scene was, "How is Davian?" She would later say she remembered nothing. The investigation and trial. Police initially treated it as an accident. Then they looked closer. Blood alcohol, clean. Toxicology showed marijuana, but the detective who reviewed her social media noted she was a habitual user who drove regularly while high and did not believe impairment was a factor. The vehicle inspection found no mechanical defects. Expert accident reconstructionist Sergeant Adam McQuaid testified he had never, in his entire career, investigated a crash where the black box showed 100% accelerator with zero braking throughout the entire incident. The prior threats, the scouted route, the black box data, and the physical evidence led the Cuyahoga County medical examiner to amend the cause of death from accident to homicide in March 2023. Mackenzie was arrested in November 2022 and charged with murder. Her defense argued a medical episode, specifically POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, a condition that can cause fainting. Her mother testified she had witnessed episodes. A defense neurologist concluded Mackenzie had lost consciousness at the wheel, but the prosecution pointed out that Mackenzie had applied for her driver's license twice after her POTS diagnosis and signed forms both times stating she had no condition that could cause episodic impairment of consciousness. Her mother admitted the condition was never disclosed to the DMV. Mackenzie's team chose a bench trial. On August 14, 2023, Judge Nancy Margaret Russo delivered her verdict, guilty on all 12 counts. This was not reckless driving. This was murder. She was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Every appeal since, including one in April 2026, has been denied. There are essentially three theories about what happened on Progress Drive on July 31, 2022. Theory 1. It was a medical episode, the defense's theory. The defense, supported by Mackenzie's family, argues that she suffered a POTS-related episode at the wheel, possibly a fainting spell or a seizure, and that she had no control over the vehicle when it accelerated into the wall. This is also the theory Mackenzie herself promotes in her first-ever prison interview, given in the Netflix documentary The Crash, where she states, "There was no intent whatsoever. I have excessive amounts of remorse for Dominic, Davian, both of their families. This was not intentional." The defense noted that Mackenzie's blood oxygen level at the scene was 82, extremely low, which could indicate cardiac arrest or respiratory distress. The paramedic who treated her admitted that a person could have a seizure before medical personnel arrived, with no detectable signs afterward. Her new legal team has argued that a neurologist concluded she suffered a medical episode and lost consciousness. The weaknesses of this theory are significant and will be addressed in the WMLH section. Theory 2. Murder-suicide, born of a breakup obsession. This is the prosecution's theory, and the one supported by the verdict. The argument is that Mackenzie, facing the real possibility of Dominic ending the relationship permanently, deliberately drove the car into the building with the intention of killing Dominic and herself. She had scouted the route. She chose it because it was industrial, isolated, and rarely traveled at that hour. She drove normally until the moment she turned onto Progress Drive, at which point she floored it. The prosecution did not definitively claim this was planned, but the medical examiner's amended report referenced her intention of inflicting self-harm and harm unto the passengers. Judge Russo concluded with certainty that she intended to kill both Dominic and Davian, even while leaving open the question of whether she intended to die herself. The presence of Davian Flanagan added an additional charge because prosecutors argued that Mackenzie did not alter her plans, despite an innocent bystander being in the vehicle. This is the theory the court accepted. It explains the planning and the scouting of the route, but doesn't fully explore the emotional engine behind that decision, the rage and loss of control dynamic inside the relationship. Theory 3. A momentary rage response that escalated beyond intent. A third view, less official but worth addressing, circulates online and in true crime communities. The theory holds that there may have been a fight in the car in the moments before the crash, that Mackenzie didn't plan it in cold blood, but that something happened, an argument, a threat, a moment of escalation, and she acted on impulse. This theory has some surface appeal because it explains why Davian was in the car. Why would you plan a murder-suicide and allow a witness, a friend, to be present? However, this theory doesn't resolve the core physical evidence. The GPS scouting of the location 3 days earlier, the controlled turn signal, the steady acceleration. Those details don't support an impulsive snap decision. This theory captures something important about the emotional tone, the idea of explosive anger when Dominic pulls away. But it can't explain the scouted route, the deliberate turn, or the sustained acceleration on its own. The most convincing explanation is not Theory 2 or Theory 3 in isolation, but a combination of the two. The defense's only real alternative to intent is the medical episode theory. To accept that, we have to believe that a POTS-related blackout happened at the exact moment she turned onto an industrial dead-end road she'd visited days before, while her foot stayed pinned to the accelerator and never once touched a brake. That stacks a lot of unlikely events on top of each other. Occam's razor points in a different direction. We know she explicitly threatened to wreck this car with Dominic inside 2 weeks before the crash. We know her phone was at the exact crash location 3 days earlier. We know she took a route that doesn't lead anywhere useful at 5:30 in the morning when almost no one would be around. We know she used her turn signal, then floored the accelerator and never braked. The simplest explanation is deliberate, planned violence. But that still leaves a deeper question. What kind of violence was this? Cold, emotionless calculation? Or something closer to the raging emotional tone we see in the relationship? Here's the picture that makes the most sense of all the evidence. Mackenzie Shirilla most likely carried out a premeditated murder driven by narcissistic rage at losing control of Dominic Russo. Research on narcissism and intimate partner violence shows a clear pattern. When someone with strong narcissistic traits feels rejected, humiliated, or abandoned, aggression and even extreme violence can follow. The trigger is not random. It's the perceived loss of a person who is central to their self-image and ego. Dominic was that person. For roughly 4 years, he had been her primary source of attention, validation, and status. She lived in his family's home. She monitored him, threatened his car, threatened to break in, hit him, and turned the relationship into part of her online persona. The perfect couple, the soulmate narrative. Publicly, she curated the image. Privately, she punished him when he pulled away. By June and July 2022, Dominic was trying to end it for good. For someone with this pattern, that isn't just a breakup. It's a direct blow to identity. If he leaves, the story she tells herself and the world about who she is falls apart. That's exactly the kind of ego injury that can ignite narcissistic rage. If I can't have you, no one will. And we see the rehearsal for that rage in the highway incident. I'm going to wreck this car right now. That's not an abstract threat. It's the exact same weapon she later uses with the same victim in the same seat, interrupted only because he manages to get out of the car. 3 days before the crash, she drives to Progress Drive. That's the premeditation. She's not just stewing, she's scouting. She sees the end of the road, the industrial building, the isolation. She now knows exactly where a crash would be catastrophic and largely unwitnessed. On July 31st at 5:30 a.m., she puts the emotional and the practical together. The rage and the plan finally line up. This is why it makes sense to see what happened as a blend of Theory 2 and Theory 3. From Theory 2, we take the structure, a deliberate, pre-planned drive to a scouted location with the intent to kill. From Theory 3, we take the emotional core, a partner who cannot tolerate being left and whose anger over that rejection fuels the decision to go through with the plan. She didn't just snap out of nowhere, and she didn't plan this in a cold vacuum. She had been simmering in narcissistic rage for weeks, maybe months, and that rage is what made a previously unthinkable plan feel not just possible, but justified. Davian Flanagan's presence is the hardest and most tragic part of this theory. He had nothing to do with the relationship dynamic. Yet she does not change course when he is in the car. That detail pushes us away from a pure, impulsive snap. Someone who truly lashes out in a single second usually doesn't calmly take an isolated route they've pre-visited. It fits better with a person who has already mentally rehearsed the outcome and simply refuses to let go of it, even when an innocent friend is along for the ride. Her behavior afterward reinforces this hybrid view. She performs grief publicly, messaging the family, asking for photos so he can be with me forever, posting tributes, while also quickly returning to concerts, Halloween costumes, and curated images of herself. In a Netflix interview, she speaks about proving her innocence to the world, keeping the focus on how she is seen rather than on the irreversible harm done. So what most likely happened? The motive was narcissistic. She could not stand the reality of Dominic leaving and what that would mean for her identity. The method was premeditated. A scouted road, an early morning drive, a deliberate turn, and a choice to floor the accelerator without ever touching the brakes. Legally, that's premeditated murder. Psychologically, it's premeditated murder powered by narcissistic rage. Dominic Russo died because the person who claimed to love him could not tolerate losing him. And Davian Flanagan died because that morning he was in the passenger seat of someone whose need for control mattered more to her than anyone's life. That's the mix of Theory 2 and Theory 3 that, in my view, best fits the evidence.